In a time of rising unrest, when borders dominate headlines and immigration policy shapes the future of our nation, the truth matters. From the front lines of law enforcement, national security, and public policy, this is Frontline Facts, where rhetoric is stripped away, where politics takes a back seat, and where facts, hard, documented facts, lead the conversation. As instability grows beyond our southern border, as communities feel the impact at home, we bring you informed voices. Attorneys, senior law enforcement leaders, policy experts, and professionals who understand the law, the protocols, and the consequences. This isn't opinion. This isn't spin. This is clarity in a time of confusion. This is Frontline Facts, and the conversation starts now.
Welcome to Frontline Facts with Louisa Deason, where we correct the rhetoric on immigration issues and public policy. In today's episode, we have a gentleman who's going to tell us what is going on in Harris County. For starters, we understand that there's about 1,100 warrants that are out, and Harris County has about 900 of those who are murder suspects running the streets, and another 300 of those which are capital murder cases. Don Hooper, you're running for the Harris County GOP. Tell me, what on earth is going on?
Yeah, so last time I looked, which was probably a month ago, and the numbers are always changing, we had about 1,250 warrants for people for murder, so people actively being looked for. And we have about 900 people on bond for murder awaiting trial. Of those, 300 of them are on bond for capital murder.
Now, explain something to me, because I'm really confused. If you're a high risk and you're either facing murder charges or capital murder charges, why on earth are you out on bond?
Well, that never occurred before the O'Donnell consent decree. And, I don't know if that's exactly correct, but it's real close. And we had a change of guard in Harris County, resulting in the Democrats taking over Commissioner's Court. And when they did, they began a process to dismantle the criminal justice system here in Harris County. And one of the first things they went after was the judiciary. And in that process, they had filed a lawsuit called the O'Donnell lawsuit. And that was the epicenter of the O'Donnell consent decree, which it was a misdemeanor case, but the felony court judges have used it as a stepping stone from that to set bonds for people, or free bonds, or personal recognizance bonds for murder defendants and capital murder defendants.
Now, I know, having worked for ICE and done public affairs, how important the 287G agreement is, the Memorandum of Understanding. But under that O'Donnell decree case, how many are probably potentially illegal aliens that are criminals that have actually circumvented and have been bonded out? Because, it was for the indigent population initially just misdemeanors. Now I understand that there's felons being released, and many of them could potentially be a risk to the communities they're going back out into, because they're criminal illegal aliens that ICE will never be able to find unless they send big troops out to different locations. What is your stance on that? That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, well, the O'Donnell consent decree created what's called general obligation bonds, which means you never hit the jail. And if you never hit the jail, the 287G program is ineffective. And that has been a big problem. And you'll see people with 2B warrants that are illegal immigrants, and they have GOB bond eligible written on there. So they never even get seen by ICE in the jail, because they never really taken into custody.
That's really scary to think that we have these kinds of criminals running around in our communities. Tell me what the crime rate looks like. I know that it's probably the highest we've seen in a while.
It's vastly unreported, in my opinion. Kim Ogg, when she was the district attorney, set up a web page and a window to look at what she was seeing through the intake division of the district attorney's office. And so the district attorney's office maintains and operates intake, and they are in constant contact with the Houston Police Department in people being taken into custody. And so they were able to get pretty good statistics on what was happening with crime. Now, that has since been dismantled for the most part by Sean Tier as a result of his election. And of course, Sean Tier is a Democrat and a Soros DA. And they don't want people to know what the true crime statistics are, because if we did know what they were doing, it would cause problems for them politically, no doubt. But it's a concerted effort, and it's by a small group of people. It's not a larger group of people as you would think. It's an influential group of people, but some very, very wealthy donors got it into their minds that they were going to work to free all these people from the jail, with the belief that no matter how dangerous you are, you shouldn't be held in custody until you've been convicted of a crime. But I can go on and on about it and name names. You just tell me where to stop.
Well, the scarier thing to me is just the lack of accountability, to be honest with you. What's happened to Harris County? I mean, we can't have rogue DAs and rogue judges really not holding people accountable for the kinds of crimes that we're looking at. I mean, what types of serious crimes are more prevalent than others? I know with our group, with most of the illegal aliens, things start out as domestic violence, but they propel from there. And we've seen cases where in the past, ICE detainers were never honored, and you had a subject that may have been arrested 3 or 4 times for domestic violence, and then goes back and then murders that spouse or that girlfriend. And these are really these are heartbreaking cases, and of course, 100% preventable.
Yes. And the domestic abuse problem has been there for a long time. And again, it's the systematic dismantling of the criminal justice system. And so it does create victims, and the victims are the spouses and family members of those committing that violence. The real issue is the way it's being reported. And so domestic abuse is often a misdemeanor. Well, if it's a misdemeanor, it falls under a general obligation bond. They never hit the jail. ICE never sees them, and they are free to roam the country. Whereas before, the Democrats took over in Harris County, that was not the case. They would have been taken into custody. ICE would have seen them. If there were, warrants, or if there were anything else, they, would have been taken into custody by ICE and deported from our country. It is, and you see it with the recent city council decision trying to have the Houston Police Department officers not cooperate with ICE. And you see it with the county now trying to do a similar activity. And the governor quickly jumped up and rightfully so said, hey, you've entered into an agreement. You took over $100 million from us not to do that. And
now let's dive into that particular situation, because that was like a 12-5 vote. And I think it happened over the weekend. And those of us that understand what's going on, but to our audience who doesn't probably know or is not fully aware of that situation, describe that situation and what happened.
Well, Alejandro Salinas, a newly elected city council member, took it upon herself to ramrod this idea through that the Houston Police Department shouldn't cooperate with ICE. And if you pulled somebody over, you couldn't hold them long enough for ICE to get there. That was her idea. And it was just one more way to have a non-cooperation agreement between ICE and the Houston Police Department, which had been put in place previously by agreement and by contract with the Houston Police Department. The Houston Police Department went to the governor, or I'm not sure the exact details of how it occurred, but the governor had a contract with the Houston Police Department to cooperate with ICE fully. And I'm sure it was in cooperation with the federal government and the spirit of the law. Donald Trump's immigration policy was, I'm sure, the impetus of that, but I don't know how the details of it went down. But they got over they got over $121 million to do it. And here comes Miss Salinas and says, "No, we're going to change all that. That contract doesn't mean anything. And we're just going to be Marxist and ignore the law, and let me go to court, Mayor, and do that." And thankfully, I mean, it could have gone many different ways, but the mayor said, "No, I'm not taking this to court. We have a contract with the governor, and currently they're going back and forth. I'm not sure on what, but the contract's pretty clear on what they have to do." And I can't imagine it going any other way. And let's just talk about the contrast. And so the contrast is Texas. And I always look at Florida. Florida is nearest to our size. Florida is nearest to us in many, many different things. And of course, Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida. And he's made it so that every single sworn police officer in the state of Florida cooperates with ICE fully.
Well, and here's the thing that really, I think the public needs to understand. That detainer or that 287G is an agreement. It's a memorandum of understanding.
That's what
I used to train law enforcement on that. But
yeah,
the question here is, I just think the common sense has left the building. When you stop and think about how police departments and other sheriff's offices cooperate with other entities in other states and other law enforcement capacity.
Right.
If you have a murderer in Tennessee and somebody has a intel on that murderer and he's stopped in Tennessee for a traffic violation, if you see that he's wanted for murder in Texas, that cooperation happens almost immediately. But it's the vitriol and the hatred towards ICE and Trump and everything else is creating this mantra of just uncommon sense practices that really are costing people's lives. I mean, these are 100% preventable situations, and it just is. I can't even wrap my mind around it.
In the case of, well, let's just talk about DWI or DUI, whatever you want to call it, driving while under the influence, and you are arrested as a misdemeanor for DWI, you are immediately eligible for a GO bond or a general obligation bond. You never hit the jail. Well, if you've had 10 DWIs, you never hit the jail. But if you've had 10 DUIs, you eventually somebody in the court's going to go, "Oh, wait a minute. This is a felony. We need to go pick this guy up." Of course, he's not in custody. And so they're not going to run out there and look for him. And in the meantime, he goes out or she goes out and gets drunk again and kills somebody. And that happens a lot. And it is a real problem. And I tell people, now you can drink and drive in Harris County. You're not going to go to jail. And you can assault people. You're not going to go to jail. You can steal their cars. You're not going to go to jail. That's a misdemeanor, by the way. Unauthorized use of a motor vehicle is a misdemeanor. And none of those things require you to hit the jail.
That's great.
It's insane. It's completely insane. And
so how do you change that?
For Republicans, I am not going to say every Democrat judge is bad and every Republican judge is good. We can't make that argument because Lord knows we've had Republican judges who have done this too. However, I think if you were to, I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but the descriptors to winning a Democratic primary as a judge requires that you follow Rodney Ellis, John and Laura Arnold, and Alex Karakastas' belief, and Evan Mintz from the Houston Chronicle. And throw that idiot in there. the idea that, oh my God, we shouldn't be putting people in jail until they've been convicted of a crime. Well, they've got 10 DWIs. Well, they haven't been convicted of all 10 of them.
Well, because I've never been in jail.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But it's just nonsense. And by the way, there is a history to this. What we're seeing happen in Harris County is what happened in New York State. In New York State, in New York City is where it emanated from. There was a systematic destruction of the criminal justice system in New York that is the exact blueprint, not exactly, but very, very close blueprint being done by the exact same people that destroyed the criminal justice system in New York are seeking to destroy the criminal justice system here. And which makes us all unsafe.
And who's funding this?
Well, that's a good question. If you look at the funding of the O'Donnell bail bond lawsuit, which culminated into the O'Donnell consent decree, it was funded by John and Laura Arnold and Mark Zuckerberg and his wife with a $20 million donation. And it was to Alex Karakastanis, a guy from New York who ran what's called the Civil Rights Corporation. And it's really a Washington, D.C. base, but he's from New York. Alex Karakastanis was originally a public defender in New York, but, very Marxist. And as all Marxists, comes from a very wealthy family and, is just an idiot. I mean, he wrote this thing called The Punishment Bureaucracy. And if you wanted to really damage your brain cells, I don't encourage anybody to read it. I did read it. And it's 75 pages of the most mind-numbingly just nonsense. All the police are racist. All of the judges are racist. Everybody's a racist involved with the criminal justice system. Therefore, we can't put anybody in jail.
And that's exactly what they run to. When they don't like something, the first thing that they bring up is race.
Oh, no,
it's this lack of common sense is what it is. It's almost like a mental illness.
Well,
let me go into, for example, I know that in Florida, we are although we're about the same size and everything else, I think people don't understand exactly how that 287G program works. When you deputize other law enforcement to cooperate, you're not deputizing them to do the work ICE agents do. You're deputizing them to make a call, to be able to ask a question and then defer that over to an ICE agent. They can either get to the jail or they can get to that location to pick up that individual. Let them determine. They're not asking for nationality. But to think for a minute that we don't even have agents sometimes in the jail, in the intake process, that will allow the agents to have their own databases and the access to the systems that will identify them if they're prior deports, if they've been prior convictions for crimes as illegal aliens. That's the insanity of this. This is why sometimes we'll run over a case that looks like this individual's been deported 17 times and the public just goes, wait a minute, how could that possibly happen? Well, you just explained step by step how that happens.
Right. Yeah.
We have to change this system. That's insane.
It is, and it's dangerous. And your audience is probably wondering, well, how does Don know so much about this? My wife was the former deputy chief of the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and she's currently the general counsel of the Republican Party of Texas. She also wore another moniker. She was the special prosecutor against Lena Hidalgo, appointed by Kim Ogg.
And she was that Lena Hidalgo needs to go.
Yeah, she's gone. She just shows up at, I always joke with people, a Harris County commissioner is one of the greatest jobs in the world and only requires you to show up at 24 meetings a year. So twice a week, you have to show up at a meeting. That's the job description. So, but she's been missing a lot of meetings, which has been very helpful to the staff. She's not running for re-election, thankfully, and she's gone. And I think everybody treats her as if she's gone. She rears her ugly head from time to time, and incidents like what happened with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, where, she was trying to use her privileges as county judge to
Abuse of power.
take the seats of people that had paid thousands of dollars for them. I'm the county judge and I'm going to sit here. Well, ma'am, I paid $1,200 for that seat. Are you sure you're not going to let me sit there? I'm not. I mean,
That's nonsense.
I mean, it's just, I can kind of go on and on about it, but so my knowledge, comes from watching this stuff. Of course, I broke a cardinal rule, in the Republican Party when I supported Kim Ogg over Devin Anderson. And I did that for a number of different reasons. Devin Anderson was very problematic as a Republican, and she had jailed David DeLayden, a pro-life activist. And it became very clear to me that, on top of jailing a rape victim was testifying in a courtroom coming up on the Christmas holiday. And
I remember that case. Yes, I did.
The infamous Jenny case. It was all over the news at the time. And the bridge too far for me was David DeLayden. I always tell people I'm pro-life before I'm a Republican, and I'm pro-life, a Christian, and a Republican, probably in that order. Probably Christian, pro-life, then Republican. But I'm not going to separate my principles or my values from who I am because of party. And you see good people on both sides. And I will say that Kim Ogg, once she was elected, worked very, very hard to straighten out the office with regard to those issues. And I told people a lot back when this was all going on that Kim was, I'm not going to say that she's pro-life, but I will say that her father, Senator Jack Ogg, Kim's father, was a state senator. He was the last person to carry pro-life legislation in.
She's no dummy. She spent years and years and years at Crime Stoppers.
Oh, absolutely. And Kim, has seen it all. She's very, very smart. And you have to think about that. Kim Ogg appointed my wife, who wasn't at the time of the appointment, but later became the general counsel of the Republican Party. But at the time of the appointment of being the special prosecutor against Lena Hidalgo, she wasn't. But Sean Tier and the Democrats spent millions of dollars in television commercials about my wife and about Kim, and how Kim appointed the Republican general counsel to investigate Lena, and it was all political. And of course, if you'd ever met my wife before, you would know that she's about justice, and she's the first person to look at a crime, and if a defendant is innocent, she's very quick to dismiss the case. And I describe it this way about my wife, and you can always tell a good prosecutor from a bad prosecutor. Good prosecutor, you walk up to them as a criminal defense lawyer in a courtroom and say, I want to see the state's file. Bad prosecutor says, no, you'll see it at trial, and you'll get your Brady evidence, as it comes out, and depending on what comes up. And no, you don't get to see the state file. You walked up to my wife in a courtroom and said, hey, can I see the state's evidence in the file? Yes, you can. Here's the entire file. Go through it very, very carefully. I don't want to make a mistake and put an innocent person in prison.
Well, because you're dealing with people's lives. I mean, you can change a family's life entirely by getting the wrong.
And sometimes police make mistakes. And sometimes people lie and people don't tell the truth. And truly, a prosecutor is about seeking the truth. And, and I saw my wife do it time and time again. Hey, here's everything I know about this case. Go through every single page of it and tell me what I have wrong. I don't want to put an innocent person in prison. There's definitely the crowd that did not believe that. And the hang 'em high, it was all about the numbers and whatnot. And interestingly enough, and they all became Sean Tier supporters. It's always,
Well, there has to be a definite balance. Now, let me kind of do a shift here for a little.
Sure.
I interviewed a gentleman named Mario Garza, not too long ago. He's the president of the bail bondsman.
I know Mario. He's a great
guy.
And I have supported his efforts. And I believe that removing the bail bondsman from the equation has been extremely detrimental to the Harris County justice system. And let me tell you why.
Let's go into that. Yes.
And so with the bail bondsman, you were paying somebody to get a loved one out of prison, or you had the resources to pay. And there was an investment in you walking the streets and behaving. And bail bondsmen were all about that. They wanted to make sure that you were going to return to court, and they would monitor you very carefully. And if you violated any of your conditions for your bond, they would go get you and bring you back into custody before, a lot of times before the court could even issue a warrant or a 2B to go out and get them. But once that process is in, bail bondsmen are mean, bail bondsmen are, only rich people use bail bondsmen and blah, 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 blah.
They're putting their own money on the line as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so, socialist Marxists, let's take the money out of the system and make sure that there's no invested guarantee financially to return somebody to court, and let's see what happens. Well, of course, nobody shows up for court now, and you've got a lot of people running around, Harris County. Think of all the murderers running around Harris County. You got a bunch of people running around Harris County for burglary, assault, you name it, name a crime, and they're running around and they don't show up to court. And
that's kind of like the illegal alien population with, if they have final orders, or if they 90% of them don't show up to court,
right?
The immigration court. So, therein lies the difference, but it's a problem. Listen, we're going to have to cut over to a commercial break real quick because we do have sponsors we want to highlight. Thank you for waiting.
When the stakes are high, clarity matters. In today's fast-moving media environment, misinformation spreads fast, especially around immigration policy, national security, and public safety. That's where Deason Consulting Services steps in. Led by Louisa Deason, former investigative journalist, DHS and ICE subject matter expert, and certified neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, Deason Consulting equips leaders, candidates, law enforcement, and executives with clear posture, confident delivery, and fact-based messaging. From immigration policy education and media response strategy to crisis communication and executive message development, Deason Consulting helps you cut through the rhetoric and speak with authority. Whether you're preparing for a press conference, navigating a complex policy issue, or facing high-pressure media scrutiny, we prepare you to lead. Deason Consulting Services. Strategic communication, informed leadership, measured response. Contact Deason Consulting today and be ready when it matters most. Call today 832-244-2488 or email louisa@deasonconsultingservices.com.
When it comes to motorcycles, there's talk, and then there's real experience. At Mad Dog Moto, it's hands-on. Street bikes, dirt bikes, high-revving machines, and hard-ridden trail beasts. From routine maintenance and diagnostics to engine builds, clutch replacements, suspension upgrades, and performance tuning. Every bolt matters. Carbureted or fuel injected. Electrical troubleshooting, precision dial-ins. No shortcuts, no guesswork. Because performance means nothing without reliability, and power means nothing without safety. This isn't just wrenching, it's craftsmanship. It's knowing how a bike should feel when it's tuned right, how it should respond when you twist the throttle, and how it should hold up when you push it hard. At Mad Dog Moto, every machine gets treated like it's our own. Ready to ride stronger? Call us today at 346-404-3901. I repeat, 346-404-3901. Or email us at maddogmotoservice@gmail.com. Mad Dog Moto. Dependable, powerful, ready to up your ride.
Well, we are back. I am Louisa Beeson. I am your host for Frontline Facts. We are correcting the rhetoric, and we're coming back to our guest today. Don, tell me, as we went to commercial break, we were talking about a couple of very alarming statistics. Let's go back to that same issue that we left before the commercial break. When you don't have a system that allows people that have committed crimes to be jailed so that they go through the system and there's accountability and there's a checks and balance situation, then, of course, you remove the element of the bail bondsman. I mean, that's just a mix for a huge disaster and for repeat crime offenders. What are we seeing here?
First of all, you see no accountability. And after all that, you saw all these very weird bail bonding companies pop up, and they were just going out in the way it's set up is that banks guarantee, or financial institutions guarantee, the bonds written by the bail bondsman, and they have credit to do that. Almost instantly saw, when the Democrats took over, all of these weird bail bonding companies that popped up all of a sudden who didn't have that financial backing, yet they were using their companies to put out bonds for people who didn't show up, and there was no effort to go out and collect on that. And of course, my wife says it best. The criminal justice system is designed of people of integrity to run it. And when that doesn't happen, it fails miserably. And that's what you're seeing, whether you're talking about judges or people running bail bond companies. I'm not talking about the good bail bond companies. There are many good, responsible.
Well, but isn't there any kind of a regulation to those bail bond companies? There's got to be.
Well, there is. And actually, they came in and shut more, and Mario can speak much better to this than I can, but I know one of these companies was shut down, and there was a criminal investigation by the feds, I believe. I think the Department of Justice got involved with it here in Harris County, in at least one of them, and I think that there were some arrests, but I'm old and I forget these things that happened a couple of years ago. But there was one in particular that just popped up out of nowhere that was owned by a brother and sister, and a sister got in trouble, or brother got in trouble, and then sister took it over, and then sister they were doing the same thing, and they didn't have the surety for the bonds that they were getting, and of course their clients, or the people they had out on bond, weren't responding to court, and it became very glaring. But again, I'm not in that business. I've never been in that business, but Mario and his group, I could talk to you ad nauseum all day about it. Again, it's this idea we're going to destroy the criminal justice system from within, and therefore we don't like bail bondsmen. They're preying on our beloved criminals by requiring them to post money to get out of, invest in their freedom to get out of jail and walk the streets, because by the grace of God, a judge has said, you know what, we're going to grant you bail, but we expect you to behave while you're out. And so and of course, the left's idea is we're going to create a bail bond company that, make anybody behave. Matter of fact, when they, abscond and don't show up in court, they're not going to even pay the county. And
Well, and if you're talking about an illegal alien, oftentimes what they do is that they just skip bail and they just
go back,
they
go back.
go to a different state or they go back to their country, and it's just that revolving door that we see over and over again. What my concern is we're at the brink now where people, there's a lot of people that are disgusted with what's happened in the last prior 4 years in that administration, but the level of ignorance to what really is happening is, I think, in my opinion, a lot of it is the rhetoric coming from leadership that doesn't want to save this country or this state. And of course, to make matters worse, is this vitriol and hatred towards a president who's probably been more pro-American and saving this country than any other president prior to that. And my concern is we've got to get past this negative rhetoric. We've got to start getting out in the communities and explaining why it's important for the Republicans to get out and vote and not just say, well, I don't like either candidate. You almost have to make the choice of who's the better bad choice in the Republican Party to turn the tide.
Yes. If you want anybody to vote, you have to deliver on what your party stands for. I'm running for Harris County Party Chair. And our party used to stand for law and order. Our party used to stand for fiscal conservatism. Our party, used to stand on accountability for bad behavior and had incentives in the law to do such a thing. And we've lost that. And one of the big reasons why I decided to run was because I noticed some people that were Republicans that were affiliated with the John and Laura Arnold Foundation doing some of the very same thing that the Democrats were doing. But, you could sit there and say that that's true on many different levels. And so when you are a homeowner, and you look at your property tax bill, the biggest part of your property tax bill goes to the Houston Independent School District. Well, the Houston Independent School District's biggest cost is educating people in our country without permission. We have a huge, and I've heard this number from anywhere from 50% all the way to 74% of the people who attend HISD schools are children of illegal aliens, are not
they're under DACA, or they came in under the DREAM Act, or something is going on.
Or just recently crossed with their parents, and just not here in our country legally. And it's a huge burden to the property taxpayers because that's where your property tax goes. And so, when we see, and if you're watching HISD is closing schools. HISD had a whole school that was closed in a Hispanic neighborhood because, a lot of people are self-deporting. And the president closed the border. And so that cost, those savings should go back to the property taxpayer. But the way HISD is configured and run by leftist politicians, of course, that's not going to happen. And but there's a whole bunch of incentives been put in place by Republicans to cover the cost of people in our country without permission.
And I just want to put in this figure. I know, having seen what happened during the Biden administration, that it cost Texas taxpayers approximately $850 million every year just to sustain the illegal alien minors, unaccompanied minors.
You mean healthcare or just housing and all of that?
Well, housing, healthcare, just for the minors, the unaccompanied minor.
Oh, no.
When you put that together, I mean, illegal immigration affects everything. They get to the ERs and they don't have the insurance because they're not legally here. So I guess, the fraud with all the Medicare and Medicaid, and of course, under the Affordable Care Act, that'll all come out in the wash. But
also too, Harris Health. So Harris Health is a county government agency, and they operate our big hospitals and our LBJ, Ben Taub, and now we have a new $2.5 billion hospital being built for illegal aliens. That was,
that's just, in my opinion, that just makes my blood boil. I understand when they get here, they need to, yes.
But again, those incentives for paying for their health care aren't being borne by the people. So theoretically, the people in the business world would pick up those costs for their employees. And we have a group of people in the Republican Party who their business model is built on illegal immigrant labor, which means the taxpayers are paying for their health care through their property tax. We're paying to educate their children. We're paying taxes on uninsured motorist insurance because a lot of people don't have driver's licenses, don't have insurance. I've had a couple of cars destroyed by people in this country without permission, driving without insurance, driving without licenses. And I'm not the only one. And the reason why your insurance is so high, the reason why your health insurance is so high, because you're paying for those that don't. And
Right,
you're paying
exactly.
for
And it's a vicious circle.
it is.
We pay for everything yeah, we've known this for years, but my concern is at what point do you put a stop to it? I know that the Dan Patrick had mentioned something about eliminating property taxes for those that are 55 and older, or doing something with some kind of a reform at the state level that will help, because this is crazy. The taxpayers are being taxed to death. Many are still trying to recuperate after either having lost a business or a job during the COVID era. And, people are still suffering.
Well,
You look at the market and
yeah, all true. And I will say that Dan's consultant, Alan Blakemore and company, and Dan too, are big supporters of Texans for Lawsuit Reform, who is the very embodiment of that group of business owners I was talking about, who are totally dependent on you paying for the healthcare costs for their employees, people in this country without permission, business model using illegal immigrant labor, and educating their children, educate all of that. Are they're big contributors to the Republican Party, and obviously Cindy Siegel. I mean, if you look at Cindy Siegel, my opponent, was taking money from the developers of Colony Ridge.
oh my God, are you kidding me?
Oh no. And
Well,
I campaign on that. I said, I usually start my speeches when I'm talking to people, I will not be taking money from Colony Ridge.
Well, and I mean, it's just kind of like those. There are pockets and areas in town that I'm sure a lot of the police won't go into, and that's probably one of them. I got a lot of calls about that. But let's take a
Sure.
shift into some other topics. Now,
Sure.
in the position that you're running for, what are the other kinds of things that you really are adamant about pushing through and then making sure that people understand?
Well, I think the biggest job of the Harris County Republican Party chair, well, by definition, it's conducting the elections, and so running the elections as the party chair, and so that is defined by statute. But to make it meaningful, you have to deliver on a reason for somebody to come vote. My personal security is better under Republican leadership. Therefore, I'm going to go vote for a Republican. I'm going to go vote for a Republican judge that isn't going to let somebody out on bond for capital murder. I'm going to go vote for somebody that's fiscally responsible and not wasting my money down at Harris County Commissioner's Court. I'm going to go down an elected official who is going to go to the state house or state senate and act as a fiscally responsible adult and be a good steward of our money. But I always say this, and when I talk to people, that we always have models, right? So we have models that work and don't work. And I will say a model that worked very well was the leadership of Steve Raddick, who's currently running for Harris County Commissioner against Leslie Briones. And Steve always said it best. He was I think he was a Harris County Commissioner for 36 years, maybe 38, long time. And Steve says it this way: my job as county commissioners is to deliver the very best infrastructure for business to conduct business on. streets, roads, parks, have to be the best. And if I can deliver a good value in that way, they will come to Harris County, put their businesses here, and be able to commerce. And they're not going to be driving the roads of Harris County, paying $20,000-$30,000 every time the truck runs over a big pothole and destroys a tire, or
the flooding situations on the street.
The floodings, or the retail businesses owners that get flooded, you name it. Their job is to do that. And the Harris County Republican Party has gotten away from that. Now the Democrats have taken over the county. It used to be 4 Republican commissioners and 1 Democrat. Now it's 1 Republican and 4 Democrats, and we just have to change that. And if we're going to get our county back, and one thing that we didn't talk about is the Harris County Jail. Now, and I bring that up because that is part of our infrastructure. And the argument is, and we saw it in New York, and it began in New York. Oh, we're not going to put any money into Rikers Island. If you ever watched a Law and Order episode, you heard of Rikers Island. That's their jail in New York. And they would not maintain it. They wouldn't do anything to it. And they would shame judges that would send anybody. Oh, how could you send anybody to Rikers Island? Exact same thing they're doing to the Harris County Jail. When you hear, oh, we have terrible conditions at the Harris County Jail. Well, the Democrats run it. Have you talked to Rodney about this? I mean, we've been asking for a new jail. We've been asking for, the jail to be upgraded and in good working condition and well staffed and a safe place to house defendants as they await trial. But no, the Democrats don't want to do that. They want to make it as nasty.
It's funny that they complain about the ICE facilities that are federally, contractual agreements with higher standards of detention than the Harris County Jail.
Yeah. Oh, but it is a purposeful strategy. We're going to destroy the jail so nobody can send anybody there. We're going to destroy Rikers Island. It's all part of this idea of destroying the criminal justice system and remaking it the way we want to do it. And the process and the reason why they've been so successful in doing that, and I consider that part of the infrastructure that I'm talking about, that the reason why they've been so successful in doing that is because the system was never built to be destroyed from within. It was always contemplated by Republicans and Democrats that people of integrity would be judges, people of integrity would be police officers, people of integrity would be jailers, people of integrity would be running the Office of Court Administration. We didn't contemplate a bunch of leftists running this place for their own ends of creating chaos. And in the chaos they seek to create is an old tried and true method of Marxists throughout the world. And
we have to make sure that we're getting the right people in office. I tell people
absolutely 100%.
And back to you're running for the GOP chair, but my question is how many precinct chairs are empty today?
Probably over. Cindy was talking about it, and she said we had 600 precinct chairs, and she's including precinct leads. And so I think we have around probably close to 400, which leaves 600 vacant. We have over 1,100. I think we have 1,134 the way it's currently now. It's under litigation because of the redistricting, and some people say it's this, but I think under the current, I think it's 1,134 precinct chair, maybe 1,234. I'm old, I forget these things, but it's a number. I'm 64, by the way.
I'm not that far behind you.
Well, you don't look it.
Oh, well, thank you.
But yeah, it's a problem. But again, To become a precinct chair, and a Republican precinct chair, you've got to give them something of value to do it. We're gonna help you with your public safety issues. We're gonna help you with the crime issue. We're gonna help you with the tax issue. We're gonna help you with those things that are fundamental principles as being a Republican. And quite frankly, the Harris County Republican Party hasn't delivered on that in a long time. And let me give you an example. We had so Cindy Siegel was the chair for Paul Simpson, and I said chair, the treasurer for Paul Simpson. Cindy's a CPA. That's who I'm currently running against. And Cindy's a nice woman.
I met her the other night. She actually was on stage with you.
Yes. And we speak, frequently. We just disagree on this idea. Again, she takes money from Colony Ridge. TLR is a big supporter of hers, and the group that profits off illegal immigration are big supporters of hers. And that's the fundamental difference that and of course, as you can imagine, big business, there's a lot of businesses that depend on illegal immigrant labor. And what they really depend on is not making, that's the funny part about all of this, is that they don't want them to become citizens, because the second they are citizens, what do? I want more money. I want you to pay me. Oh, well, wait a minute. You're being paid a slave wage before. And there's example after example of people, who are not citizens, and all of the taxes and whatnot that, you have to pay as a citizen. But it's a very unfair system, and you have to deliver fundamental fairness to our citizens, to our Republicans, to vote, and give them a reason to vote Republican. Quite frankly, we haven't been doing it.
Well, we go back to the boots on the ground, but let me ask you this. So if it's involving money, we always know the illegal alien is always going to be set, they'll take abuses that most others won't, and they're afraid to report it. But for example, I know Texas is incredibly connected to the trade in Mexico and vice versa. So Texas, I think, is probably the largest, the state that receives most of the trade from Mexico and vice versa than any other state in the United States. But we also know that you can't run illegitimate businesses. I guess the concern we have is when you come in and you build a business and you're defrauding the type of visas that you're coming into and building in Harris County. Our concern is, are you implementing the things in place, like the E-Verify system, where, it helps you. And why this system today isn't mandatory is beyond me. But, let's kind of brush on that, and then we'll get ready to close out.
Okay. But before I talk about that, I did want to say that Cindy's predecessor, who she was the treasurer for, was Paul Simpson. Paul Simpson was such a never Trumper. And by the way, I support the president's immigration policies. I support the president in his fiscal policies. And, I'm a Trump supporter, as opposed to Paul Simpson, who, when he was chair, didn't even mention Donald Trump's name the first 3 years that he was in office. And then Cindy took over for him. And Cindy, has had to placate the Trump supporters within the party. And we'll talk about Donald Trump. But the question is, and I don't know who Cindy voted for, but I'll guarantee you she voted for Nikki Haley, not Donald Trump.
Probably. Well, and I look at it from the mass migration, the invasion that we had in this state. And I could tell you, number one, thank God for Governor Abbott, who did put DPS on the front lines when Biden removed the Border Patrol from the front lines.
Yeah.
And accused him of whipping people with reins, and that never happened. We saw, that's a tactic that they used. But my bigger concern was, Biden saying that it would take an act of Congress. Well, Congress instilled and wrote the laws that ICE and everybody else follows. So it's kind of ludicrous. And those laws haven't changed for 35 years. So it's kind of crazy to think he needs a fascist because he's following the same laws that have been on the books that Obama and Bush and everybody else followed, with the
Well,
exception of Biden for 35 years.
yeah, and they all were such liars, and Donald Trump made them into be such like, oh, it's up to Congress to close the border.
He
Donald
did it in
Trump
less than
closed
24
it.
hours.
He did it less than 24 hours and shut it off in, like that. Well, I mean, it just speaks for itself. And, I want to just think about we didn't talk about it, but if you look at Adrian Garden, Precinct 2, I'm talking to you. I live in downtown Houston. I'm looking out over the east side. And Precinct 2 voted for Donald Trump. They supported the president. And, that had to be a real stunner and a real wake-up call for Rodney. And those voters didn't come back and vote for us in, our local elections, but boy, they came out and voted for Donald Trump. And when you think about the 2024 election, remember what had happened. Nikki Haley wouldn't get out of the race, and she wouldn't leave the race until she got to Texas. Why did she want to wait until she got out of Texas? Because we don't have closed primaries, and she was encouraging the Democrats to cross over and vote in the Republican primary for Nikki Haley in Texas. And it's hard to recruit judges when you do that.
Yes.
And you tell everybody Donald Trump's going to drag down the ticket. He's awful. He's bad. If Nikki Haley is not successful, we're all doomed. Well, that was the message from the Harris County Republican Party. And nothing could have been further from the truth.
Right.
Donald Trump.
And I think it's an educational piece. I think a lot of people don't realize. A lot of people will call me and say, well, who should I vote for? I'm like, well, what district are you in? And of course, you've got to make sure that they understand you do have to do some research about the candidates so that you learn and how important it is to really make the change at the local level, because that changes the state and then federal. But you've got to get out to vote for the local.
You got to get out to vote.
Incredibly important.
But I will say it warms my heart because the Hispanic voters, the Hispanic voters in Harris County, the Republican Party shares their values in my heart. Maybe not the current leadership's heart, but in my heart they do. They don't want anything different than I want. They want security. They want good schools. They want all of those things that the Democrats like to destroy. They don't want those things. And they want what I want. And then we have a party locally co-opted to go along with the Democrats and all of this stuff because they truly do want an open border. And
that no country on this planet has open borders.
No.
I mean, it's insanity.
Yeah, and they don't survive as a country. I mean, you can't. The United States can't pay for. I think the last survey that was done internationally had over 800 million people who wanted to come to the United States. We can't afford that.
No, we can't. And I know that Biden lifted the public charge aspect of those people coming in, but that's one of the requirements is when you come in, there's only two ways to adjust your immigration status. And it's through either a family-based petition, immediate family-based petition, or a business that can support a position that hasn't been filled in a year with a U.S. citizen. But what we've done is we've come to the end of our show. Mr. Hooper, I want to thank you very much for being
Don't call me Mr. Hooper. I'm going to look for my dad.
Well, Don, I can't thank you enough. And of course, we hope that this will air towards the end of the week, and I'll let you know. But we'd love to speak to your wife as well and get a perspective from her.
Well, she's a very interesting person, and she just spoke at the NRA. She was the lawyer for Twin Peaks at the Waco shootout, which was the topic over there for this weekend. But she spoke on Friday right in front of Harmeet Dillon, and we got to kind of hang out with Harmeet for a little while. But
Matt Velasquez, the owner of 920 Patriot Radio, is a dear friend of mine. He said that they were going to interview them, so I'm sure she spoke to them as well.
Well, Harmeet, we were walking her through the convention center, and she didn't stay very long. She had to get back on the plane. She flew with the Attorney General and on his airplane, and they were not here very long. So I don't know that they did any interviews. And I didn't realize they can't get involved with politics. They can't go on political shows. And
Yeah.
several people, as we were walking through the NRA convention, wanted to talk to Harmeet about politics, and she would always stop them and say, "I can't talk about that. I'm with it." Yeah,
Well, you
but
don't
that
really
was
want to
true.
go into that when
Yeah,
make yourself vulnerable.
yeah, but that was true. I mean, she can't. Hey, I've got, I run the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. I can't speak on those political issues, and I was real respectful. I was very impressed that she had actually, because you kind of want to answer those questions, but she knew that if she did, somebody was going to say, "But didn't you say this over here?" And no, a lot of respect.
Well, listen, Donna, I want to thank you again, and everybody else. I want to thank our audience and our sponsors, and of course,
Oh
as we
yes,
come to the conclusion of today's episode. But I want everybody to understand that we are here. Frontline Facts with Louisa Deason is. Stay tuned. We'll have another episode coming soon.
thank you, Louisa.
You're very welcome.
Have a great day.